Okay, gonna get right going here. I've got an Umpqua XS415 hook in the vise and using UTC Ultra Thread in the 140 denier in tan. Gonna go ahead and walk the thread back pretty much to the bend of the hook. And the first material I'm going to tie on are the eyes. And these are crab shrimp eyes by Enrico Puglisi in the large size, colored black. I like to bend the end of the eye so that they pop out a little bit from the hook. Not necessary, I just think it makes the fly look a little better. And I'm going to angle them slightly down, as you can see. Just go ahead and secure that in. And then another eye on the other side of the hook, bent outwards just like the first one. You want to try to get them even. And then I like to use wire cutters for these. You can use your dull scissors if you have them, but the reason they're dull is probably from cutting materials like this. Then once that section is cut, I like to cover up those little sharp ends of the monofilament there. And then work the thread back towards the tie-in point of the eyes. And the next material I'm going to tie in is a cut-off piece of Foxy's 3-inch brush. This is the olive color. The next material, 2 pieces of nymph size pumpkin colored barred silly legs. Go ahead and secure those down right on the top of the hook shank. I like to trim it just a little longer than the front piece of that Foxy brush. And the next material, 2 pieces of root beer colored crystal flash. Go ahead and secure that right on top of the hook shank. And trim it about the same length as the legs, maybe a tad longer. Then the next material is 3mm tan foam. And I like to make a point on the other end, on the tie-in point, just to not build up quite as much bulk on the hook shank. And the cut I made is about a 1/2 inch thick. Half an inch wide and about 1 inch long. Go ahead and secure that down. and sticking with the foam material. The next is 2 millimeters. And just like the 3 millimeter front piece, I like to make a point at the tie-in end as to not build up as much bulk. And as you're securing this in, the thing to keep in mind is you want to get this piece as far close to the tie-in point of the first piece of foam, so that when it pulls back at the end over the fly, there's no gap like this. You want to make sure there's no gap there. Just go ahead and tighten that down, get that bulk down. And this is 3-inch wide olive colored foxy brush. You can go with 1.5 inch here, or some shrimp dub or tarantula dub. I just had some extra of this 3-inch laying around and just went with it. And also the tarantula dub and the shrimp dub is quite thick. It's very brushy. So I like the way this material is a bit more sparse. It doesn't build up quite as much bulk. And then for here, I'm making 3 wraps with the brush, making sure to pull those fibers backwards as you palmer around. Go ahead and secure that brush down, trying not to trap any of the fibers that you just tied. Then I like to use my dubbing brush here to brush those fibers that are sticking up and point them down. And then this segment of the shrimp pattern is a bit larger than the back segments, so that's why there was 3 turns of the material. And go ahead and secure this. And since it is about 1/2 inch wide, I like to make sure to pinch that foam and make sure it's securing nicely up against the hook shank. And then for the rest of these segments, just 1 wrap. Making sure those fibers are pointing backwards. You want to try to get up against the back side of that foam as much as possible, because you want to make 3 more segments of this, and if you don't go tight up against that foam, you're going to get too close to the hook eye. So once that wrap is complete, go ahead and secure that wire down, trying not to trap those materials. That's what I'm doing here, is trying to pull the materials I tied back and the rest of the brush forward. And go ahead and, as you're wrapping, pinch that foam. And you want to walk the thread up just a little bit to your next tie-in point. ahead and do one palmer. Pulling those fibers down. And then try to separate what you just tied in from the rest of the material. Go ahead and secure that. And then creating another segment. And go ahead and do the final palmer. Right behind the eye of the hook. And hopefully you're not too far up on it by this point. It does take some practice. And this is the last wrap of the epoxy brush, so make sure you secure it down nice. And again, using my wire cutters here. This brush does have a wire in the middle, so I think it's smart to just use wire cutters. And go ahead and make some securing wraps to get the rest of that brush down. And then this is the last segment of the body. Pinching that foam, making sure the foam is centered on top of the hook shank. Make sure you're behind the eye of the hook. Can get quite frustrating to get to this point of the fly and not have enough space. I'll go ahead and secure that down, making sure it's centered. And then since I am rather close to the eye of the hook here, instead of using my whip finish tool, which can be tricky to get it tucked back in there, I just like to make 4 or 5 hitch knots. Make sure that's secure. Clip the excess or clip the thread off. And here's a little trick for getting those materials cut down. You could always use scissors. Sometimes the lighter is just more effective. And I'm using some Zap-A-Gap here to get into those thread wraps on the knot, just to add some durability to the fly. Another thing that can be frustrating is you go out and fish your fly and it starts coming unraveled. So I always like to put a little bit of glue or UV epoxy. But there's really no head on this fly, so Zap-A-Gap works just fine. And you want to trim this rear section maybe a 1/2 inch. And this is what gives the fly the gurgler effect as it pops along the surface. It's pretty irresistible to fish from my experience. And then since this is the 3-inch long material, I do like to trim kind of to the hook bend Then the fly gets a little bit off camera here, but all I'm doing is pulling up the rest of those body materials and even up the trim. And there it is, the Poppin Flats Shrimp. This is my favorite topwater pattern. Catches redfish, snook, tarpon. Well, if you liked the video, if you learned something, please hit the like button. And for more fly tying videos and exciting fishing action, hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching.